Every time you drive your car, someone is writing it down. In January of 2025, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, filed a lawsuit that spelled out exactly how. The company doing the writing was called Arity. It is owned by Allstate. And if you drive a Toyota, a Lexus, a Jeep, a Dodge, a Ram, a Chrysler, or a Mazda from roughly the last 6 years, or if you have the Life 360 app, the Gas Buddy app, or Fuel Rewards on your phone right now, some of what Arity wrote down about you may have ended up in your last insurance quote. You never consented to any of it. You were probably never told it existed. And once you understand how that data was used, the $600 jump on your renewal last spring starts to make sense. Since January of 2022, the Bureau of Labor Statistics Index for motor vehicle insurance has risen 55%. That is a steeper 4-year climb than the one that followed the 1976 inflation spike, which used to hold the record. For a driver paying roughly $1,200 a year in early 2022, it works out to around $1,800 today for the same coverage, same car, same driving record. Over the same window, the industry's total direct written premiums reached $359 billion in 2024, up 13.5% in a single year. At the end of that run, the personal auto segment posted a $37.6 billion net profit, the highest in a decade, after losing $21 billion just 2 years before. That is a $58 billion swing, and the people who paid for the recovery were drivers, most of whom never filed a claim. 3 rating factors did almost all the work. None of them have very much to do with whether you are a good driver. A woman in her 70s had never filed an insurance claim in her life. She paid cash for groceries, bought her cars outright, never carried a credit card. Her son happened to be a senior agent at her own insurance carrier, and one afternoon she called him to ask why her premium had just doubled overnight. He pulled her file. The answer, once he worked his way through the underwriting, was that his own company's algorithm had started flagging her empty credit file as a high-risk signal, not because she drove differently, not because anything in her policy had changed, but because the model could not score a driver with no credit history and had defaulted her to the worst tier. He asked if there was a way to override it for a family member. There was not, even for him. The fix, which he eventually talked her into, was to open a single credit card, run her groceries through it, and pay the statement off every month. 6 months in, her premium dropped back to where it had been. A version of that story sits on car forums and insurance subreddits in the thousands. In 47 of the 50 states, insurance companies are legally allowed to use your credit history as a rating factor. Only California, Hawaii, and Massachusetts have banned the practice outright. A 2023 Consumer Federation of America report, led by former Texas Insurance Commissioner Robert Hunter, pulled the numbers directly from state rate filings. The Michigan filings show a driver with a perfect record but poor credit paying 263% more for the same policy than a driver with excellent credit. Same car, same coverage. In Minnesota, the gap is 172%. In Florida, 143%. State Farm's own filings show a 78% surcharge on drivers with merely fair credit and a 224% surcharge on drivers with poor credit. In most of this country, a driver with a clean record and a low credit score pays more for auto insurance than a driver with a drunk driving conviction and a good one. That is one of the 3 factors. The second is harder to shop your way out of because you cannot negotiate with your own mailing address. In 2018, a researcher named Douglas Heller at the Consumer Federation of America ran an experiment across 10 American cities: Atlanta, Austin, Detroit, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Tampa, Trenton, Buffalo, Columbus, and Denver. In each city, he pulled quotes for 2 houses under 100 yards apart, often directly across the street from one another on opposite sides of a zip code boundary. Same car, same coverage, same driver profile. In all 10 cities, the higher premium landed on the side with lower household income and a higher share of non-white residents. Heller later described what he had found as a modern version of redlining. The same neighborhoods that used to be refused coverage entirely were now simply being charged more for it. In the 2025 follow-up data, the gap had widened. In New Jersey, majority black zip codes with fair or poor credit received average quotes of $3,038 a year. Majority white zip codes with the same credit profile were quoted $1,988. The third factor is the one the Paxton lawsuit actually targets, and it is the one that moved the industry's numbers the most. If you plugged a progressive snapshot device into your car anytime after 2018, or downloaded the State Farm Drive Safe and Save app, or enrolled in Allstate DriveWise, or any of the 6 or 7 equivalents, the pitch every time was that you could prove you were a good driver and earn a discount. What the fine print said, and what Progressive's own shareholder disclosures confirm, is that about 20% of enrolled drivers end up paying more at renewal, not less. The program defines a hard brake as any deceleration faster than 7 miles per hour per second. That is the threshold a responsible driver hits when the car in front of them stops abruptly, or when a deer crosses the road, or when a light turns yellow late. The algorithm cannot distinguish defensive driving from bad driving. It logs the event either way. What came out in the Paxton filing, though, was that most of the data being used against drivers never came from any telematics program they knowingly enrolled in. Allstate's subsidiary, Arity, had been paying the developers of unrelated smartphone apps to install tracking software inside them. Life 360, the app parents use to see where their teenagers are driving. Gas Buddy, the app drivers use to find cheap fuel nearby, fuel rewards, and a smaller program called Rootly. That software logged GPS, acceleration, phone movement, and time of day, and transmitted all of it back to Arity. Arity then used the pool to build what its own internal documents called the largest driving behavior database in the world, covering over 45 million Americans and trillions of miles driven. Allstate priced its own policies off that database, and it sold the data to competing insurance carriers who used it to adjust theirs. A federal class action followed on February 5th, 2025, filed in Illinois on behalf of drivers in every state. The car brands named in the complaint as having fed data through the same pipeline through their own onboard systems include Toyota, Lexus, Mazda, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Fiat, Ram, and Maserati. A 2023 Mozilla Foundation study of how automakers handle driver data found that 92% of car makers give their customers almost no control over what their own vehicle collects, and 84% share or sell that data to third parties. The car you bought is generating a running profile of you. You do not own that profile, and the primary customer for it is the same industry that decides what your insurance costs. The results showed up in the annual reports later the same year. Progressive's net income for 2025 came in at $11.3 billion. Allstate's at $10.2. State Farm's auto business, which had posted a $2.7 billion underwriting loss in 2024, turned a $4.6 billion profit in 2025. A $7 billion swing in a single year off roughly the same pool of drivers and roughly the same driving conditions. Allstate's chief executive, Tom Wilson, took home over $26 million in total compensation that year, the highest of any auto insurance executive in the country, according to a Consumer Federation of America tally. That is where your premium went. 3 things actually work as countermeasures: in descending order of usefulness. The first is to shop the entire market every 12 months. Every major insurer prices new customers lower than renewal customers on purpose, and LexisNexis's own 2025 data shows that the roughly 45% of American drivers who shopped their policy last year saved real money, often more than any telematics program ever offered them. The second is to request your LexisNexis Club report and your credit-based insurance score, both of which you are entitled to under federal law, free of charge. That score is not your FICO. It is the number your insurer actually uses to set your rate, and most drivers have never seen it. The third is to audit the apps on your phone. If Life 360, Gas Buddy, Fuel Rewards, or Rootly is sitting on your home screen right now, the Paxton lawsuit is still an active matter, and the privacy settings inside each of those apps were changed in 2025. Go into each one and check them. A car used to be a private thing. You got in, you shut the door, you drove. Nobody outside the vehicle could tell where you had been, how fast you got there, or when you chose to slow down. That version of car ownership ended quietly, somewhere between 2018 and 2024, and most of the 45 million Americans had happened to found out the same way, by reading the lawsuit that finally named it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you found this useful. There's more on the way, and I'll see you in the next one.